The evacuation sirens wailed across Forward Base Epsilon as plasma fire rained down from the crimson sky. Private Marcus Chen pressed his back against the twisted metal of what used to be a supply depot, watching his squad mates sprint toward the last transport ship. The Zephyrian assault had come without warning, their crystalline fighters tearing through Earth's defensive grid like paper. "Chen, move your ass." Sergeant Rodriguez's voice crackled through the comm unit, barely audible over the screaming engines and explosions. "Transport leaves in 60 seconds. Marcus looked down at the unconscious form of Commander Sarah Blake. Her tactical helmet cracked, but still functional. Blood seeped from beneath her armor, where Zephyrian energy weapons had found their mark. She had been leading the counterattack when a plasma burst sent her flying into a collapsed building. Marcus had found her buried under debris, barely breathing, but alive. The transport ship's engines roared louder, preparing for departure. Through the smoke and chaos, Marcus could see his squad waving frantically from the loading ramp. Behind them, more Zephyrian dropships descended like metallic vultures, disgorging their insectoid warriors onto the battlefield. "Sir, I've got the commander," Marcus spoke into his comm, hefting Blake's limp form over his shoulder. "She's alive but critical. I need medical support on the transport." Static filled his earpiece before Rodriguez's voice returned, strained and urgent. "Negative, Chen. Zephyrians are jamming our signals. Can't hold the LZ much longer. Get here now, or we leave without you." Marcus stumbled forward, Blake's weight making each step a struggle. The commander had pulled him out of more firefights than he could count during their 6-month deployment on this god-forsaken planet. She had earned the respect of every soldier under her command. Not through fear or rank, but through her willingness to put herself between danger and her people. A plasma bolt sizzled past his head, leaving the air crackling with ionized particles. 3 Zephyrian warriors emerged from the smoke, 50 meters away, their chitinous exoskeletons gleaming in the firelight. Their compound eyes locked onto Marcus, and they raised their bio-rifles in perfect synchronization. Marcus dove behind a overturned vehicle as energy blasts turned the ground where he had stood into molten slag. Blake groaned softly, her eyes fluttering open for a moment, before closing again. Her tactical display showed critical life signs across multiple systems. "Transport is lifting off in 20 seconds. Rodriguez's voice was barely a whisper now. "Marcus, where are you?" Through a gap in the wreckage, Marcus could see the transport ship's ramp beginning to close. His squad mates stood silhouetted in the bright interior light, still searching the battlefield for any sign of him. The Zephyrian warriors were advancing, their clawed feet clicking against the metal debris as they closed in for the kill. Marcus made his choice. He activated his comm one final time. "Tell my family I did my duty, Sarge, and tell them the commander comes home." He switched off his transmitter before Rodriguez could respond and focused on the tactical situation. Blake's helmet display showed a detailed scan of the approaching enemies and the surrounding terrain. The woman was a strategic genius, even unconscious, her equipment still providing critical battlefield intelligence. The transport ship lifted off just as the Zephyrian warriors reached Marcus's position. He watched the familiar blue glow of Earth technology disappear into the smoke-filled sky, carrying his friends to safety. The knowledge that they would live to fight another day made his decision worthwhile. The lead Zephyrian warrior rounded the corner of the vehicle, its bio-rifle charging with a distinctive whine. Marcus had seen what those weapons could do to human flesh, had watched good soldiers reduced to ash in seconds, but something in Blake's earlier words echoed in his mind. Humans don't abandon their own. That's what makes us different. The Zephyrian fired, but Marcus was already moving. He had studied their attack patterns during months of bitter fighting, learned to read the subtle shifts in their posture that telegraphed their intentions. The plasma bolt passed through empty air as Marcus rolled left, coming up behind a pile of twisted support beams. Blake's helmet continued its quiet analysis, mapping enemy positions and calculating firing solutions. Marcus realized she had been planning a counterattack even while unconscious. her tactical mind still working to protect her people. The helmet's display showed 3 more Zephyrian squads approaching from different vectors, but also revealed something else. A hidden maintenance tunnel leading to the old mining complex. The facility had been abandoned years ago when the first Zephyrian scouts arrived in the system, but Marcus remembered Blake mentioning it during one of their briefings, noting it as a potential fallback position if the base was ever compromised. She had been preparing for this moment long before it arrived. Marcus adjusted Blake's position on his shoulder and studied the route to the tunnel entrance. 40 meters of open ground lay between him and safety, but the Zephyrians were spreading out to surround his position. Their tactical doctrine favored overwhelming firepower over individual initiative, a weakness Blake had exploited countless times during their campaign. The warrior closest to him began another advance, its weapon system cycling through targeting modes. Marcus waited until it was completely focused on his last known position, then sprinted toward the tunnel in a low crouch. Blake's armor scraped against his shoulder plates, but she remained unconscious and mercifully quiet. Plasma fire erupted behind him as the Zephyrians realized his movement. The air filled with the acrid smell of superheated metal as energy bolts struck the ground around his feet. Marcus zigzagged between debris piles, using every piece of cover Blake's tactical analysis had identified. The tunnel entrance loomed ahead, a dark opening in the facility's foundation. Marcus could hear the Zephyrians chittering communication as they coordinated their pursuit. Their language sounded like breaking glass mixed with static electricity, a sound that had haunted his dreams for months. A plasma bolt struck the ground directly in front of the tunnel, sending molten metal splashing across the entrance. Marcus felt the heat through his armor's environmental systems as he leaped through the glowing barrier. Blake's unconscious form clutched protectively against his chest. They tumbled into the darkness of the maintenance tunnel, rolling across the metal grating that lined the floor. Blake's helmet light activated automatically, illuminating a narrow passage that stretched into the depths of the mining complex. The sound of Zephyrian pursuit echoed from the entrance behind them, growing closer with each passing second. Marcus struggled to his feet and began moving deeper into the tunnel. Blake's tactical display showed a 3-dimensional map of the complex, highlighting routes to various chambers and facilities. Most were marked as structurally unsound, but one path led to what appeared to be a communications array in the facility's central core. The Zephyrians reached the tunnel entrance, their bio-rifles casting eerie shadows on the walls as they swept the area with targeting lasers. Marcus pressed himself against the tunnel wall, feeling Blake's shallow breathing against his shoulder. Her life signs were deteriorating, but slowly enough that she might survive if he could find medical supplies in the complex. The lead Zephyrian warrior squeezed through the entrance, its exoskeleton scraping against the metal framework. The others followed in single file, their movements perfectly coordinated despite the confined space. They had adapted their tactics for tunnel fighting, switching to shorter-range weapons and movement patterns optimized for close combat. Marcus continued deeper into the complex, following Blake's helmet guidance through a maze of intersecting passages. The mining facility had been built to accommodate heavy machinery, leaving most corridors wide enough for vehicles, but the Zephyrians' insectoid forms allowed them to move through spaces that would challenge human mobility. A secondary passage appeared on the left, leading toward what Blake's display identified as a medical station. Marcus hesitated, torn between the immediate need to treat Blake's injuries and the longer-term requirement to stay ahead of their pursuers. The Zephyrians were methodical in their hunting, but they lacked the improvisational skills that made humans dangerous opponents. He chose the medical station, hoping Blake's tactical analysis included defensive positions around the facility. The passage sloped downward into the complex's lower levels, where emergency lighting cast red shadows on the walls. The air was stale but breathable, recycled through systems that had been running on automatic for years. The medical station occupied a small chamber filled with diagnostic equipment and supply lockers. Most had been sealed when the facility was evacuated, but Blake's helmet interface quickly identified usable medical supplies and began highlighting treatment protocols for her injuries. Marcus gently placed Blake on an examination table and began following the helmet's medical guidance. Her armor had absorbed most of the plasma damage, but several joints had been compromised, and internal injuries were possible. The helmet's scanners provided detailed information about her condition, allowing him to administer proper first aid even without medical training. Blake's eyes opened as Marcus applied a surgical patch to a damaged section of her armor. Her gaze was unfocused, but aware, taking in their surroundings with the automatic assessment of an experienced commander. She tried to speak, but managed only a weak cough that brought up traces of blood. "Don't talk, Commander," Marcus whispered, monitoring the medical readouts on her helmet display. "You've got internal bleeding and possible concussion. The suit's handling life support, but you need to stay still." Blake's hand moved weakly toward her sidearm, muscle memory responding to the presence of danger even in her injured state. Marcus gently redirected her hand away from the weapon and activated the medical station's diagnostic scanner. The ancient equipment hummed to life, cross-referencing Blake's injuries with its medical database. The sound of Zephyrian movement echoed through the passages outside their chamber. Their pursuers had reached the junction where Marcus had turned toward the medical station, and their clicking communication suggested they were analyzing the various routes. Zephyrians were patient hunters, willing to systematically search every possible hiding place rather than risk losing their prey. Marcus studied Blake's tactical display, looking for defensive options around the medical station. The chamber had only one entrance, making it easy to defend, but impossible to escape if they were discovered. However, the display showed an emergency ventilation shaft that connected to the main facility. Large enough for a human to crawl through, but too small for Zephyrian warriors. Blake's condition stabilized as the medical systems completed their work, but she remained barely conscious. Her tactical helmet continued its analysis, identifying potential escape routes and defensive positions throughout the complex. The artificial intelligence in her equipment had been programmed with her strategic preferences, making decisions she would make if she were fully functional. The Zephyrians had chosen to split their search, with 2 warriors investigating the upper passages, while the third explored the lower levels. Marcus could hear the distinctive scraping of exoskeleton against metal as one approached their location. The creature moved with predatory patience, pausing frequently to analyze environmental data through its biological sensors. Marcus positioned himself beside the chamber entrance, Blake's sidearm in his hands. The weapon felt heavier than his standard rifle, designed for precision rather than rapid fire. Blake had always preferred accuracy over volume of fire, a philosophy that had served her well in countless engagements. The Zephyrian warrior appeared in the passage outside, its compound eyes sweeping the area in systematic patterns. Marcus held his breath and waited for the creature to move past their hiding place. But it paused directly outside the chamber entrance. Something had caught its attention. Possibly the faint hum of the medical equipment or traces of their human scent. The warrior's bio-rifle began charging with its characteristic whine, preparing to flood the chamber with plasma fire. Marcus knew that a single sustained burst would kill both him and Blake instantly, turning their shelter into a superheated tomb. But he also knew that Zephyrians were creatures of pattern and protocol, following predictable behaviors even in combat situations. Marcus stepped into the doorway just as the warrior completed its targeting sequence, startling the creature with his sudden appearance. The Zephyrians' weapon systems needed a moment to reacquire their target, a delay that Blake had taught him to exploit during their training exercises. He put 3 rounds center mass before the creature could respond, watching it crumple to the passage floor in a cascade of chitinous fragments. The gunshots echoed through the facility like thunder, alerting the other Zephyrian warriors to their location. Marcus quickly returned to Blake's side and checked her condition. She was awake now, her eyes clear and focused despite her injuries. "How many?" she asked in a whisper that barely carried across the chamber. 3 total, 1 down, 2 still hunting. Marcus helped her sit up slowly, watching the medical readouts for any signs of deterioration. "We've got maybe 5 minutes before they reach this level." Blake nodded and gestured weakly toward her helmet display. "Ventilation shaft leads to the communications array. If we can reach it, we might be able to contact the fleet." Marcus studied the route she indicated. The shaft was narrow and would require crawling for nearly 100 meters, but it bypassed most of the facility's main passages. Blake's condition would make the journey difficult, but staying in the medical station meant certain death when the remaining warriors arrived. He helped Blake to her feet, supporting her weight as they moved toward the ventilation access panel. Her armor systems compensated for most of her injuries, but she moved with obvious pain and difficulty. The helmet's medical scanners showed her condition was stable but fragile, requiring care. The ventilation shaft stretched ahead like a metallic tomb, barely wide enough for Marcus to crawl while supporting Blake's injured form. Her breathing was labored but steady, each exhale fogging the faceplate of her tactical helmet. The medical systems in her armor worked constantly, administering pain medication and monitoring her vital signs while they navigated the narrow passage. Behind them, the sound of plasma cutters eating through metal echoed through the facility. The Zephyrians had discovered their escape route and were systematically dismantling the ventilation system to reach them. Their methodical approach gave Marcus and Blake time to move, but also meant their pursuers would never give up the hunt. "Stop," Blake whispered, her voice barely audible through the comm system. Marcus turned carefully in the confined space, watching as Blake's helmet display flickered with warning indicators. Her suit's power systems were failing, damaged by plasma fire during the initial attack. Without full life support, her injuries would become critical within minutes. "How long do we have?" Marcus asked, though he could see the answer in the rapidly declining power readings on her display. "Maybe 10 minutes of life support. Less if I keep moving." Blake's tactical mind was already analyzing their options. Her helmet, highlighting potential solutions in the facility schematics. The communications array is still 30 minutes away at this pace. Marcus studied the shaft ahead of them, looking for alternative routes or emergency exits. Blake's equipment showed several access points leading to different sections of the facility, but all required significant detours that would consume more time than her failing systems could provide. The sound of metal being torn apart grew closer as the Zephyrians worked their way through the ventilation system. Their biotools were perfectly adapted for cutting through human construction, designed after years of studying captured Earth technology. They would reach the access point where Marcus and Blake had entered within minutes. "There," Blake pointed weakly at a junction in the shaft, where multiple passages converged. "Maintenance hub for this section. Should have emergency power cells and backup life support." Marcus changed direction, following Blake's guidance toward the maintenance area. Her helmet display provided detailed technical specifications for the facility's systems, information she had memorized during their mission briefings. Even injured and running on failing equipment, she remained the most tactically aware person he had ever known. The maintenance hub was a cramped chamber, filled with monitoring equipment and spare parts. Emergency lighting activated as they entered, revealing banks of power cells and atmospheric processors designed to support repair crews during extended operations. Blake's helmet immediately began scanning for compatible components that could extend her suit's operational time. "Power coupling on your left," she instructed, her voice growing weaker as her suit's systems diverted energy from non-essential functions. "Should be compatible with my armor's backup systems." Marcus located the coupling and connected it to Blake's armor, using emergency repair protocols her helmet provided. Power flowed into her suit's batteries, stabilizing the life support systems and bringing her medical readouts back into acceptable ranges. The improvement was temporary, but it would give them time to reach the communications array. The Zephyrians had reached their entry point and were following their trail through the ventilation system. Marcus could hear their chittering communication as they coordinated their pursuit, analyzing human scent markers and equipment signatures. Their biological sensors made them excellent trackers, capable of following prey across vast distances. Blake struggled to her feet, her armor systems functioning normally again but her physical condition still compromised. "We need to move. This hub connects to the primary maintenance shaft, which runs directly to the communications array. 40 minutes, if we can maintain pace." Marcus checked his own equipment status, noting that his ammunition was running low and his suit's power was at 60%. The extended firefight and support systems for Blake had drained his resources faster than normal, but he had enough reserves to complete their mission if they avoided further combat. They entered the primary maintenance shaft, a broader passage designed for transporting heavy equipment between facility sections. The increased space allowed them to move faster, but also meant the Zephyrians would be able to pursue more effectively once they reached this level of the ventilation system. Blake's tactical display showed the communications array as a large chamber in the facility's central tower, equipped with quantum entanglement transmitters capable of instantaneous communication across interstellar distances. The equipment had been built to contact Earth during emergencies, exactly the kind of situation they now faced. The shaft sloped upward as they approached the facility's upper levels, requiring more effort from Marcus as he helped Blake maintain their pace. Her armor assisted her movement, but the internal injuries she had sustained made every step painful. She endured the discomfort without complaint, focused entirely on reaching their objective. A new sound joined the pursuit behind them, the grinding of metal being cut apart by Zephyrian biotools. Their pursuers had reached the maintenance hub and were enlarging the passages to accommodate their exoskeletons. The modification would slow them temporarily, but give them better mobility once completed. "Movement ahead," Blake warned, her helmet detecting thermal signatures in the shaft ahead of them. 3 contacts. Stationary positions. Looks like an ambush. Marcus studied her display, recognizing the tactical formation the contacts had assumed. The Zephyrians had split their forces, with some pursuing from behind while others moved through the facility's main passages to intercept them. It was a classic pincer movement, designed to eliminate any possibility of escape. Blake's helmet analyzed the ambush position, identifying weaknesses in the Zephyrian formation. The creatures had positioned themselves to cover the main shaft, but ignored secondary passages that connected to adjacent systems. Her tactical programming highlighted an alternative route through the facility's waste management system. "Detour through the recycling plant," Blake suggested, though her voice carried reluctance about the additional delay. "Adds 20 minutes, but avoids the ambush. Your call." Marcus considered their options while monitoring Blake's medical readings. Her condition remained stable, but showed signs of gradual deterioration that the armor systems couldn't completely address. 20 minutes might push her beyond the limits of her life support, but walking into an ambush would certainly kill them both. "We take the detour," he decided, helping Blake change direction toward the waste management access point. The access point led to a series of automated processing chambers where the facility's organic waste had been broken down for recycling. The equipment stood silent now, covered in years of accumulated dust and corrosion. Blake's helmet mapped the area, identifying a route through the processing chambers that would bring them to the communications tower. They moved through the abandoned recycling plant, past massive bioprocessors and atmospheric scrubbers designed to handle the waste from thousands of workers. The scale of the operation reminded Marcus of how important this facility had once been, before the Zephyrian invasion forced its abandonment. Blake's pace was slowing despite her armor's assistance. The internal bleeding had resumed, though at a manageable rate, and her oxygen consumption was increasing as her body worked harder to compensate for her injuries. Marcus adjusted his support, taking more of her weight as they navigated between the processing equipment. The sound of pursuit had faded temporarily, suggesting the Zephyrians were still following their original route through the maintenance shaft. The ambush team would realize their error eventually, but the confusion might give Marcus and Blake enough time to reach the communications array and send their message. A service ladder led upward toward the facility's central tower, where the quantum communication equipment was housed. Blake's helmet showed the array as a complex installation spanning multiple floors, with redundant systems designed to maintain contact with Earth even under combat conditions. The equipment had been designed specifically to penetrate Zephyrian jamming technology. Blake paused at the base of the ladder, her breathing heavy and labored. "Marcus, listen carefully. The communications array requires 2-person authentication to activate. Command codes are in my helmet's secure storage, but you'll need to input the transmission manually." She showed him the activation sequence on her display, walking him through the complex procedure required to establish quantum entanglement with Earth's communication network. The process was designed to prevent enemy forces from using captured equipment, requiring specific biometric verification and command protocols. Marcus memorized the sequence while helping Blake climb the service ladder. Her armor's strength enhancement made the ascent possible, but her movements were becoming increasingly unsteady. The medical readouts on her helmet showed dangerous fluctuations in several key systems. They reached the communications chamber after climbing 4 levels through the tower's service areas. The room was vast, filled with quantum processing equipment and transmission arrays that hummed with residual power. Emergency lighting revealed that the facility's automated systems were still maintaining the equipment, waiting for authorized personnel to activate communication protocols. Blake collapsed into the primary operator's chair, her armor systems struggling to keep her conscious as they approached the quantum communication console. The equipment recognized her biometric signature and began initialization procedures, preparing to establish contact with Earth's military command. "Transmission ready," Blake announced, though her voice was barely a whisper. "Input your message and authentication codes. Make it count." Marcus activated the communication array and began transmitting his report. The quantum entanglement system would carry his words instantaneously across the galaxy, reaching Earth command in real time despite the vast distance. He spoke carefully, providing tactical information about the Zephyrian assault and their current situation. "Earth command, this is Private Marcus Chen, 1st Reconnaissance Battalion, transmitting from Forward Base Epsilon. Base has been overrun by Zephyrian forces. Commander Blake is critically wounded, but alive. We have valuable intelligence about enemy tactics and capabilities. Request immediate extraction and medical support." The response came within seconds, confirming that his transmission had reached Earth and that rescue operations were being prepared. Command informed him that a stealth frigate was already en route to the system, equipped with advanced medical facilities and extraction specialists. The ship would arrive within 6 hours. Blake smiled weakly at the news, though her condition was continuing to deteriorate, despite the armor's medical support. 6 hours, she murmured. "Think we can hold out that long?" Marcus checked the facility's defensive systems through Blake's tactical interface. The communications tower had been designed as a hardened position, with blast shutters and automated defenses that could be activated remotely. If they could secure the chamber and access the tower's weapon systems, they might be able to survive until rescue arrived. The sound of movement in the tower's lower levels announced the arrival of their Zephyrian pursuers. The creatures had finally realized their mistake and tracked them to the communications facility. Their chittering grew louder as they began ascending through the service areas, following the same route Marcus and Blake had taken. "Defensive systems are online," Blake reported, her fingers working weakly across the tactical display. "Tower has automated plasma cannons and energy shields. Should discourage casual visitors." Marcus activated the tower's defenses, watching as blast shutters sealed the chamber, and weapons systems came online throughout the structure. The Zephyrians would find their ascent much more difficult with automated defenses targeting their movement, but their persistence meant they would eventually find a way through. Blake's helmet chimed with an incoming transmission from the rescue frigate, now accelerating toward their position at maximum velocity. The ship's captain provided updates on their approach vector and extraction procedures, confirming that medical specialists were standing by to treat Blake's injuries. "Frigate ETA is now 5 hours, 40 minutes, the captain reported. "We're reading defensive systems active at your location. Can you maintain position until arrival?" Marcus looked at Blake's weakening condition and the tactical display showing multiple Zephyrian contacts approaching their position. "Affirmative, command. We'll be here when you arrive." The tower's automated defenses engaged the first Zephyrian warriors to reach the upper levels, plasma fire lighting up the service areas as the creatures sought cover from the defensive grid. Their bioarmor provided some protection against the automated weapons, but the sustained fire forced them to advance more cautiously. Blake transferred command of the defensive systems to Marcus, teaching him how to coordinate the tower's weapons and adjust their targeting priorities. Her tactical expertise remained sharp despite her physical condition, identifying optimal defensive strategies for their situation. "Focus fire on the access points," she advised, highlighting critical choke points on the tactical display. "Force them to bunch up where the automated systems can be most effective." Zephyrians hate being channeled into kill zones. Marcus implemented her strategy, concentrating the tower's firepower on the main access routes while maintaining coverage of secondary approaches. The Zephyrians adapted quickly, using their biotools to cut new passages through the tower's structure. But each modification required time they couldn't spare. The rescue frigate continued its approach, broadcasting regular updates on its progress toward the facility. Marcus could track the ship's position through the quantum communication array, watching as it navigated through Zephyrian patrol zones and defensive positions. The vessel was running silent, using advanced stealth technology to avoid detection. Blake's condition stabilized temporarily as her armor's medical systems found a better balance between pain management and system maintenance. She remained conscious but weak, her tactical awareness undiminished despite her physical limitations. Her experience and knowledge were keeping them alive in ways that pure firepower could not. The Zephyrian assault continued with methodical precision, each wave testing different approaches to the tower's defensive grid. Marcus learned to read their attack patterns, adjusting the automated systems to counter their tactical adaptations. Blake coached him through the defensive procedures, her voice growing weaker but her mind remaining sharp. The communications tower groaned under the sustained bombardment as Zephyrian biocannons systematically dismantled its defensive grid. Each impact sent vibrations through the structure that Marcus could feel in his bones, while Blake's tactical display showed their automated defenses failing one by one. The tower's shields flickered and sparked as alien weaponry overloaded their power systems. Blake's condition had stabilized at a dangerous equilibrium, her armor's medical systems working at maximum capacity to keep her alive. She remained conscious but spoke in whispers, conserving energy while her tactical mind continued analyzing their deteriorating situation. Her helmet display showed the rescue frigate's approach vector, now less than 2 hours from their position. "They're bringing up something big," Blake warned, her sensors detecting massive thermal signatures moving toward the tower's base. Biocannons aren't their primary assault. They're preparing for siege warfare. Marcus watched the tactical readout as Zephyrian engineers positioned what appeared to be a structural disintegrator near the tower's foundation. The weapon was designed to dissolve molecular bonds in human construction materials, capable of reducing entire buildings to their component atoms. It was overkill for their situation, but the Zephyrians seemed determined to eliminate any possibility of their escape. The tower's remaining automated defenses concentrated fire on the siege weapon, but Zephyrian bioshields deflected most of the plasma bolts. The creatures had learned to adapt human defensive systems to their own tactical needs, creating overlapping fields of protection that made their equipment nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons. "We need to relocate," Marcus decided, studying alternative positions within the communications facility. "This tower won't survive another 10 minutes of that bombardment." Blake's helmet highlighted an emergency bunker beneath the communications array, designed to protect critical personnel during facility-wide emergencies. The bunker had independent power and life support systems, plus communication equipment that could maintain contact with the rescue frigate. Getting there would require abandoning their elevated position and moving through areas that might be compromised by Zephyrian infiltrators. "Bunkers designed for situations like this," Blake explained, transferring command codes to Marcus's equipment. "But the access tunnel runs directly under their siege position. They'll detect our movement and adjust their targeting accordingly." Marcus helped Blake to her feet, noting that her armor's power levels were dropping despite the connection to the tower's emergency systems. Her injuries were requiring increasing amounts of medical support, draining energy faster than the facility could provide. The rescue frigate's medical bay represented her only chance for long-term survival. They moved toward the bunker access point as the tower shuddered under another barrage of biocannon fire. The Zephyrians had established a steady rhythm of bombardment, each salvo weakening the structure's integrity while their engineers prepared the molecular disintegrator for deployment. Their coordination suggested this was a rehearsed operation, practiced against similar human installations. The access tunnel was narrow and steep, leading down through the tower's foundation toward the underground bunker complex. Emergency lighting activated as they descended, revealing reinforced walls designed to withstand orbital bombardment. The facility's designers had learned from previous Zephyrian attacks and built accordingly. Blake's helmet detected movement in the tunnel behind them as Zephyrian infiltrators followed their path through the facility. The creatures had sent smaller forces through maintenance passages, while their main assault focused on the tower's defenses. Their multi-vector approach demonstrated the tactical sophistication that made them such dangerous opponents. "Contact rear," Blake whispered, her sensors showing 3 Zephyrian warriors entering the access tunnel. "They're moving fast, probably trying to reach us before we can activate the bunker's defenses." Marcus increased their pace while monitoring Blake's medical readouts for signs of deterioration. Her condition remained stable but fragile, requiring careful handling to avoid complications from her internal injuries. The armor's medical systems were approaching their operational limits, unable to provide more intensive care without proper facilities. The bunker entrance appeared ahead, sealed by blast doors that required biometric authentication to open. Blake's armor interfaced with the security system, providing the necessary command codes to gain access. The massive doors slid open with a pneumatic hiss, revealing a chamber filled with communication, equipment, and life support systems. Marcus sealed the blast doors behind them as plasma fire erupted in the tunnel outside. The Zephyrian warriors had reached the bunker entrance, but found themselves blocked by armor designed to withstand nuclear weapons. Their biorifles would eventually cut through the doors, but the process would require significant time and resources. The bunker's communication array activated automatically, establishing contact with the rescue frigate and updating their status. The ship's captain confirmed their position and provided detailed extraction procedures for when the vessel reached orbit. Medical teams were standing by to treat Blake's injuries using advanced regenerative technology. "Frigate ETA 90 minutes, the captain reported. "We're detecting heavy Zephyrian activity around your position. Can you maintain secure contact until arrival?" Marcus confirmed their status while helping Blake into the bunker's medical station. The automated systems began scanning her injuries and providing treatment recommendations that her armor implemented immediately. The facility's resources were more extensive than her suit's capabilities, offering better pain management and stabilization protocols. Blake's tactical display showed the Zephyrian assault continuing above them, the molecular disintegrator charging for its first deployment against the communications tower. The weapon would reduce the structure to component atoms within minutes, eliminating any evidence of their presence, but also destroying valuable intelligence about human defensive capabilities. "They're being thorough," Blake observed, watching the destruction unfold through the facility's sensor network. Complete elimination of the installation suggests they're planning long-term occupation of this system. This wasn't a raid, it was conquest. Marcus realized the implications of Blake's analysis. The Zephyrians weren't simply attacking human outposts. They were systematically clearing territory for permanent settlement. The intelligence they had gathered about alien tactics and capabilities was more valuable than anyone had realized. The bunker's systems detected the molecular disintegrator's activation as energy readings spiked throughout the facility. The communications tower began dissolving from its foundation upward, its molecular structure breaking apart in a cascade of released energy. The process was oddly beautiful, like watching a massive ice sculpture melt in accelerated time. Seismic sensors registered the tower's collapse as thousands of tons of construction material returned to their elemental state. The Zephyrians had effectively erased the facility from existence, leaving only empty space where human engineering had once stood. Their thoroughness was both impressive and terrifying. Blake's condition improved as the bunker's medical systems supplemented her armor's capabilities. The automated treatment protocols were designed specifically for combat injuries, providing targeted therapy for plasma burns and internal trauma. Her vital signs stabilized at more acceptable levels, though she remained critically injured. The rescue frigate continued its approach through Zephyrian patrol zones, using advanced stealth technology to avoid detection. The ship's sensors showed multiple alien vessels in the system, confirming Blake's assessment about the invasion's scope. This was indeed a conquest, rather than a simple military raid. "New contacts," the frigate's captain reported. "Zephyrian heavy cruisers entering the system. They're deploying orbital bombardment platforms around the planet. Extraction window is narrowing." Marcus understood the implications immediately. The Zephyrians were preparing to sterilize the planet's surface, eliminating any remaining human presence through systematic bombardment. The rescue frigate would need to extract them before the orbital platforms came online, or they would be trapped on a dead world. Blake struggled to sit up in the medical station, her tactical mind still processing the strategic situation despite her injuries. Tell them to target the siege equipment first. Zephyrian engineers are their weak point. They can't replace that equipment as easily as warriors. Marcus relayed Blake's tactical assessment to the frigate's crew, knowing her expertise could be crucial to their survival. The rescue ship's weapon systems were designed for stealth operations rather than direct assault. But precise strikes against key targets might create the distraction they needed for extraction. The bunker's sensors detected new activity in the surrounding area as Zephyrian ground forces began searching for their hiding place. The creatures were methodical in their approach, using bioscanners to analyze the facility's remains for signs of human presence. Their persistence meant they would eventually locate the bunker's concealed entrance. "They're getting close," Marcus warned, watching thermal signatures move across the bunker's perimeter. "Maybe 30 minutes before they find us." Blake nodded weakly, her attention focused on the tactical display showing the rescue frigate's final approach vector. The ship was running silent, using gravitational shadows to mask its approach while Zephyrian orbital defenses scanned for threats. The extraction would require perfect timing to succeed. The frigate's captain contacted them again as the ship entered the planet's atmosphere. Beginning final approach. Extraction zone is hot with enemy contacts. We'll have a narrow window for pickup before their reinforcements arrive. Marcus helped Blake prepare for extraction, ensuring her armor's systems were configured for rapid transport to the frigate's medical bay. Her condition remained stable but critical, requiring immediate surgery once they reached the rescue ship. The next few minutes would determine whether she survived her injuries. Zephyrian searchers reached the bunker's concealed entrance, their bioscanners detecting human scent traces despite the facility's air filtration systems. The creatures began deploying cutting tools to breach the entrance, working with the same methodical precision they applied to all engineering tasks. The rescue frigate appeared overhead, its stealth systems failing as it activated landing thrusters. Zephyrian ground forces immediately opened fire, plasma bolts lighting up the sky as they tried to prevent the extraction. The ship's defensive screens deflected most of the incoming fire while its weapons systems engaged the most dangerous threats. Marcus activated the bunker's emergency beacon, providing the frigate with precise coordinates for extraction. The ship's cargo bay opened as it descended, revealing extraction specialists in powered armor, ready to provide medical support. The sight of human rescuers filled Marcus with relief after hours of fighting alone. Blake managed to stand with assistance from her armor's systems, determination overriding her physical limitations as they prepared to leave the bunker. She said quietly, her voice barely audible over the battle sounds outside. "Thank you for not leaving me behind." Marcus helped her toward the bunker's emergency exit as plasma cutters began penetrating the main entrance. "Humans don't abandon their own, Commander. That's what makes us different." The frigate's extraction team reached the bunker just as Zephyrian warriors broke through the entrance. Plasma fire filled the chamber as human and alien forces engaged in close combat, with extraction specialists providing covering fire while Marcus and Blake were lifted to safety. The rescue ship's medical bay activated the moment Blake was brought aboard, advanced regenerative systems immediately beginning treatment for her injuries. Marcus watched the planet's surface recede as they escaped orbit, the Zephyrian invasion forces growing smaller until they disappeared entirely. "Mission successful," the frigate's captain announced as they jumped to hyperspace. "Intelligence package received and medical patient stable. Commander Blake will make a full recovery thanks to your actions, Private Chen." Marcus looked down at Blake's tactical helmet, which he had carried throughout their escape. The device contained months of intelligence about Zephyrian tactics, capabilities, and strategic objectives. The information would help Earth's military develop better defenses against future attacks, potentially saving thousands of lives. Weeks later, Marcus stood at attention in Earth Command headquarters as Admiral Harrison pinned a medal to his uniform. The ceremony was small and private, attended only by senior officers and Blake herself, now fully recovered from her injuries. The intelligence they had brought back had already led to new defensive strategies and weapon developments. "Private Chen," the Admiral said formally, Your actions on Forward Base Epsilon exemplified the finest traditions of human military service. By refusing to abandon a wounded comrade, you preserved vital intelligence that will help protect Earth from future Zephyrian attacks. Blake stepped forward as the ceremony concluded, her new colonel's insignia gleaming in the artificial light. Her promotion had come with her recovery, recognition of both her tactical brilliance and her survival against impossible odds. She carried her old tactical helmet in her hands, now upgraded with new systems based on their shared experience. "Marcus," she said quietly, offering him the helmet. "This belongs to you now. You earned it out there, when you chose duty over safety." Marcus accepted the helmet with reverence, understanding that it represented more than just equipment. It was a symbol of human determination, of the refusal to abandon those who depended on them. The device would serve him well in the battles to come, as humanity prepared to face the growing Zephyrian threat. The war was far from over, but Marcus knew they would face it together. Humans had something the Zephyrians lacked: the absolute commitment to never leave anyone behind. That principle had saved Blake's life and preserved critical intelligence for Earth's defense. It would be their greatest weapon in the struggles ahead. As he left the ceremony, Marcus activated the tactical helmet's display one final time. Blake's strategic analysis appeared on the screen, highlighting defensive positions and tactical recommendations for the defense of Earth. Her mind continued to work even in peacetime, preparing for the battles that would determine humanity's survival. The helmet's final message was simple but profound. Humans don't abandon their own. That's what makes us different. And that's why we'll win. Marcus smiled as he sealed the helmet in its carrying case, knowing that Blake was right. The Zephyrians might have superior technology and greater numbers, but they would never understand the human capacity for sacrifice and loyalty. Those qualities had brought them both home alive, and they would carry humanity to victory in the war to come. The stars beyond Earth's atmosphere held both promise and threat. But Marcus no longer felt afraid of what waited in the darkness. He had learned on a distant battlefield that humans were capable of extraordinary things when they refused to give up on each other. That knowledge would sustain him through whatever challenges lay ahead. Time passed slowly as they held their position, waiting for rescue while fighting off increasingly determined Zephyrian attacks. The tower's systems performed flawlessly, but Marcus knew their ammunition and power supplies were finite. The rescue frigate needed to arrive before their defenses failed completely. Blake's helmet detected new activity in the facility's lower levels. Multiple heat signatures moving in coordinated formations. "Reinforcements," she warned, though her voice was barely audible now. "They're bringing up heavy equipment." Marcus watched the tactical display as Zephyrian engineers began installing siege equipment in the tower's foundation. The creatures were preparing for a sustained assault, bringing up biocannons and structural cutters designed to breach hardened positions. Their patience and methodical approach made them dangerous opponents in extended engagements. The rescue frigate was still 3 hours away when the Zephyrians began their final assault on the communications tower. Marcus coordinated the defensive systems while monitoring Blake's deteriorating condition, knowing that their survival depended on holding the chamber until help arrived. The tower shook under the impact of biocannon fire as the Zephyrians began their systematic dismantling of the facility's defenses, L movement, to avoid further damage. The sound of rapid movement echoed through the passages as the 2 remaining Zephyrian warriors converged on their location. They had found their dead colleague and were approaching with the ruthless efficiency that made their species such formidable opponents. Marcus sealed the ventilation shaft behind them, just as plasma fire began burning through the chamber's entrance.